Hey, welcome to the Exit Teams podcast, where business owners and their advisors get real-world insight on how to build a team of advisors, maximize value, and exit on their own terms. I'm your host, Bob Tankesley, author of Exit Teams, Build a Team of Advisors for Your Business Sale to Get a Higher Price. You can find that book and all kinds of content at exitteams.com. Whether you're years away from selling or thinking about an exit now, this episode is packed with must-know tips to help you avoid costly mistakes. Let's dive in. Today I'm joined by a true expert and my good friend. She's an expert in the world of strategic workforce planning, Maria Forbes. Maria's 30-year career serves privately held business owners and leaders across the U.S., integrating human capital into growth and continuity planning. Maria rescales tools and processes enjoyed by corporations to help lower middle market businesses develop transferable value through their biggest asset, their people. With a strong history as a trusted strategic consultant to small business owners, Maria teaches the value of unique human abilities in 3 dimensions of the mind as an ongoing driver to business success. Her mission is to frame the long-term trajectory of business growth through people-powered structures that engage the holistic strengths of the workforce as unique contributors to a shared vision. Maria provides expertise in the expanding internal capacity through creative alignment of human values, making it possible for owners and key decision makers to lead both their people and their business confidently toward the future. Maria's expertise is engaged as a guest speaker for radio, professional conferences, and leadership programs around the country. Maria, welcome. I am super glad you could be on the show. I've been looking forward to this one because the issues we're going to talk about today, they come up so often when I'm doing M&A deals in certain sectors and industries. And let's face it, where there are people, there tends to be room for HR and leadership improvement and all the good work that you do. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Good to see you again. You and I go way back. We met long before the founding of the XPX Atlanta chapter,
Yeah.
but have kept up over the years. And you just got a tremendous heart for helping owners and the families and all the employees that depend on them. So let's dive in. I know that Firepower focuses on transforming businesses from being, let's face it, owner-driven when we usually meet them, to team-driven, which is what buyers of those companies really want at the end of the day. Why is that shift from being owner-driven to team-driven so critical for owners who are thinking about growth or preparing for an exit?
Yeah, when we meet owners, they're under a lot of pressure, even though it looks like they're enjoying a highly successful business. And so it's important for us to make this shift to get them into, and you'll hear me talk about this as we're talking today, is that get them into their sweet spot so they can make sure that the future of that company is in the hands of people who are competent and trustworthy and have the capability to move it forward. So much of what they built was great for a time, but it's taking a lot more energy at a season in life when we need that they're trying to cut back, and the business still has demands. It still requires that somebody's pushing forward, somebody's keeping that engine moving. And so we hear a lot about it takes financial capital to move a business forward, but it takes human capital as well. It takes both to work together, and our job is really to serve owners first, especially founders who are still operating their business, and help them manage this change, really holding their hand through it and not just being an accountability partner, but really being a partner, a member of their team as we're doing it. So that shift is how we move their most competitive advantage, their biggest asset, into the realm of strategic growth. And we can mobilize strategy by doing that and really accelerate growth and the opportunity for the owner to make decisions about his or her role in that business.
That is so true. I find more often these days buyers are not just curious. They want to see a business where more problems are solved than still remaining. And as I said at the opening, where there are people, there is generally room for improvement. And sophisticated buyers, whether it's private equity or strategics or family offices, I've noticed over the last couple of years, they're spending a lot more time trying to zero in on and understand the human capital component of the businesses that they're looking at, the businesses they're considering buying. So I'm sure we'll dive a whole lot deeper. Did you have a thought on that?
Yeah, we're hearing this a lot today. You're right. I mean, we're hearing this so much that under the category of leadership and what makes a good leader. What makes and our founders are leaders, right? Our company owners are leaders, and there's a deficit in their world of co-leaders when we meet.
Wow.
And so that's a big ordeal for them to manage, and that's what's pressing on their energy a lot, is that lack of people that are gonna go with them. It's the question we ask them: who's on your team? And they don't really have it. They don't have an answer. They haven't been able to get themselves there yet.
This really wasn't part of my things I wanted to cover today, but I think it's worth bringing up, and that is I'm beginning to message to business owners how and help them acknowledge just how lonely it is at the top. And when you said co-leaders, you and your team kind of come alongside the owner, do you not? As a non-owning member of the team, though from the outside, really strategically leaning in and helping them make better decisions from that point forward.
And thank you for saying that. That's truly our distinction, is that we're taking on a certain number of clients so that we can do that work. Because a lot of people have programs. There are a lot of great programs out there for teams that are developed enough to follow it. And hopefully it's right for everyone.
Yep.
We know individuals, human beings are very unique, so that doesn't always happen successfully for everyone. But in our case, I've seen this it was very much a call to work with small business owners from the minute I got out of school. It was just, they were coming to me and I was going to them. I don't know. I don't even remember what I said, to be honest, but it was very much a call to help them elevate what they're doing so they can move toward the future and not just vision it, but actualize it. And that means you have to have other people around you. You got to hire well. And that's a tough exercise, because people are, moving target in business.
I know our audience has probably heard this phrase too, but I've heard, what is it? Hire slowly, fire quickly.
Yes.
You want to make sure people are the right folks joining your group. So in every change process, there's a beginning, right? So how do you help owners assess whether their current team structure is actually holding back performance and value transferability?
Yeah, for us, it always starts with strategy. So I do a lot of strategic planning work. So it doesn't look like it's part of what we do on the outside, but when we meet, I'm learning that the owners have been stuck. They've hit, a ceiling of complexity, and they can't operationalize further. They can't move the revenue targets any further. They've hit this spot where they stay the longest. It's successful, but if you stay there, you're losing ground over time, and they know that. And of course, the economy changes, and all kinds of changes are happening in the world that are impacting how you need to be successful. So when we start, the first thing is a strategic planning session. So it's with them and their advisory team, external, internal, or a couple of key players. But we've got to get strategy understood. And once we do that, they can understand who will help them get there. And so we really disrupt the status quo through our strategic process, because they want to improve on what's already there. And we want to refuel and fully engage the people that surround them, that are making these processes have made them successful and need to innovate and ignite that energy around new systems and process where it's helpful. So strategic planning informs us of what has to happen with these owners, what they've built, and how it's serving them now, and where our gaps are. And then we go to really that disruption phase of strategy of, okay, what if we start to shift? And how comfortable can we get you? Because we know that the result is going to be accelerated value, right? And then we go to organizational map.
Are you saying, are you suggesting that change is hard?
Yes, change is hard. Everyone loves the idea of it, right? But they don't like the actual doing of it. And so
Yeah.
that's why we're there, is to help them through that change. So when they're saying, ow, I don't like this, we can say, it's okay, look what's happening, and show them. Yeah.
That is awesome. So I'm sure there are bumps and bruises along the way. Do you have any kind of short list of some of the most common mistakes that small business owners make when they're trying to go through this process with you, with your help, as they're building value through the people, but they end up, sometimes with only incremental gains, not these big leaps forward, but uh, at some point along the way, there's just, well, we're trying hard, but we're not making a lot of progress. It seems like. What are some of those mistakes they tend to make?
Yeah, incremental gains happen a lot when they've tried to do the same thing but a little better. But it's still the same thing with the same people. And it's just a little better. And so what they're trying to hit that growth goal, they're you can't do the same thing even a little better. We've
Yeah.
got to really rethink it. So we do a lot of mapping organizationally that says, let's see what you've built. Let's give you a visual picture of what that looks like, how it's serving you, and where the gaps are moving forward. So when they're only getting incremental gains, we find that on the people side of things, they've not been onboarding and reboarding members. And that's just something that sounds like a hiring exercise, onboarding, and it definitely is. And we are onboarding concierge. We are deeply passionate about how onboarding happens so that we have productivity from day one. And we have to force our leaders to
Yep.
really sit down and walk them through that. But when they're making incremental gains, it really, the root cause of it is they're not, the team is not fully engaged. They're not understanding their contribution toward growth. And so there's a little bit of it's like the old saying, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, just like
Yep.
that. And so we have to stretch those muscles. And so if they can enforce change, if they stay in the game and enforce change and do it with our help and our guidance, we can stretch those muscles until new behaviors and new systems and new process become normal. And everyone is fully engaged in making that happen. So they're feeling excited about their work. And
Yep.
that's really important, that your team feels excited about their work, because our work is really around attraction, development, and retention. So in all the things I'm going to talk about, our minds are always on, are we keeping them where they want to be? Are we engaging them so they're satisfied? Are we monitoring that satisfaction? And are we retaining them all toward a contribution and growth?
Wow. So true. You mentioned you mentioned two words, onboarding, which I think a lot of the folks in our audience understand, or at least have some vague notion of. But then you mentioned a word right after that that we might not be as familiar with. I'd like you to spend a couple of minutes on talking about what you meant by this word, reboarding.
Yeah. When you have teams, especially our successful owners that have teams that have been doing the same work for a long time, their roles get really fuzzy. And when I go, when we go in and talk with them, and especially when we go in and we're talking on the owner, we always have our mapping software ready. We're mapping everything they're saying, because what they're really revealing is, I don't know anymore. I'm doing so many things. I have so much responsibility, and
Oh,
I'm
wow.
truly not doing the work that I want to do. And what we're hearing is they're job holders, but they want to be contributors. They just haven't had the freedom to get there. And so this mapping process is very key to our service offering because it reveals a lot, and it becomes reboarding. The mapping is included in the reboarding. So reboarding is like taking the same document that we use in onboarding, and we continuously, it's a living process. So we're always updating it. We're always making quarterly updates. We're making changes to the roles. We're making sure we capture dissatisfaction before it goes too far. We're making sure, again, with development and retention in mind, are we doing what we need to do for this business and for this individual? So that's
You
what
know,
does. It's keeping that business solid and secure.
yep, because the environment changes, the people, new people are hired, some people drop off, the team is constantly in flux.
Yeah.
Kind of under the heading of like talent alignment and organizational structure, because that's so important, getting the right people in the places they need to be. You use tools like, I think you called it unique contributor role mapping. How does clarifying employee roles and expectations translate into, true measurable business performance?
Yeah. When we remap roles, we see immediate change, immediate
I bet.
opportunity to capture more revenue. And in fact, we're tracking revenue with our owners as we're working. So we can see that if we're doing the right things, revenue is increasing, profit. So top and bottom line are both aided in our process. So those are the metrics we're looking at. Are we increasing revenue and profit at the same time that we're doing this work? And we know that this happens through people and effort because we've seen it for over 30 years. I've had this opportunity to engage the unique abilities of the people in the organization, from the owner to its across the organization, from ownership, management, specialist, admin, and even oftentimes external contributors. That once we engage them and their roles are not fuzzy any longer, people who've been there 15 years are reignited in their passion. We're seeing this make the change immediately.
You hear that, owners, business owners listening? You can improve revenue by optimizing your human capital
Yes,
within your company. 100%. I agree.
absolutely.
What about trends or patterns you've seen where, call it, misaligned roles causes value leakage? And that ultimately is going to become obvious to buyers in due diligence. They're going to be saying to themselves the whole time, why didn't you move this person into that position? Why did you keep that person on the payroll? And it just creates more doubt, and anything that creates doubt in buyers' minds, I can tell you, drives value down.
Absolutely. That's the problem we fix. And I love that you called it value leakage because that's really what happens.
Yep.
It's a great way to express what happens when the teams have done the same thing for too long and they have not been looking at individual and collective improvements on the way they're doing things. And therefore, that leakage happens operationally, it happens in marketing, it happens in every function of the business.
Yeah.
We're seeing it. And so we have to look at all of it. And that's what we mean when we talk about organizational mapping. First, it's the big picture of what's been built and how effective is it. And then we funnel that down to internal by department, by group, and by individual, so
Yeah.
that we're really understanding it and we're able to fix it faster because there's nothing we don't understand. But that value leakage is really, it was so interesting to me when you said that, because clear role descriptions are the fix for that. And the potential for higher level contributions really is lost when you've got the pressures of daily operations and people are just focused on their job, their day-to-day responsibilities. We've got to get them to become strategic stakeholders in the future of that business. And the way we do that is to get them to understand the higher level goals and put that into language that they understand and can make a contribution. because we're engaging what they do best.
And isn't that what buyers want? Sophisticated buyers, at least. I find for owners listening, there are the sophisticated buyers out there, private equity, strategics, family offices. They trust me. They do not want to buy problems. They want to buy problems fixed. They want to buy companies optimized. So then people ask me often, Bob, how long in advance? How early should an owner start structuring, in your world, Maria, structuring roles and responsibilities? I say, hopefully you'll back me up on this, but I say if you could just give us 2 to 5 years, we could, so much could be changed about a company, subject to the owner's willingness to let it happen. But your thoughts on that?
It is absolutely critical that we have enough time, and enough is, it's different for every company. It depends on owner temperament and trust in their people and their level of fear that something bad's going to happen if they're not in the middle of it. It also depends on whether or not the owner's truly exhausted and we catch them at the right time. Usually when we speak to owners, they're desperate for a little bit of a break. They're enjoying success, but they're exhausted. And if we get them there, if we capture that sentiment, if we say that you're feeling right now can be fixed through you people by looking under the hood first. Inside out approach is always better because we have so much bringing them new leadership and new capability from that inside out approach that they didn't even know was there in their company, because they hired based on job need and not potential. And so that foundation is, there are cracks over time, fractures in how well they're able to do things, and that puts more pressure on the owner. So if we flatten out that hierarchy, which is our goal, is to take it from very top down to less top down incrementally until the teams are very self-driven and led by others that can sit next to the owner. The owner can certainly, we talk to our owners about this. Think of your business as, instead of managing it, you're mentoring it. And so when we meet them, they're definitely managing their business, and they have a little bit of additional responsibility for people that they're testing out, but nothing huge. And as we start to work, we're pulling them into this place of being a mentor and allowing others to make decisions and allowing things to happen differently than they might have done it. That's a scary thing.
Yeah.
But we need to help them through it.
We're kind of talking about co-leadership, building co-leadership alongside the owner, and in essence, if there's going to be an exit, we're creating succession readiness. So too often, though, owners are too central to execution, and there's one thing we know about buyers: that'll reduce their confidence faster than anything. I've noticed buyers always bring this up in the first conversation or two. They always word it differently, but they're trying to get to the heart of what happens to this company if something happens to this seller. How do you help owners transition authority and decision making, as scary as it may be, to others in their own organization?
And this is a focus every single day with every single client, is that we're going to take a look at your team and we're going to discover some things. And so many times when we're starting at step one with the strategic planning, I'm seeing people literally moving in their chair because they're, oh, I can do that. Oh, I really want to get involved in that.
Yep.
But they're afraid to say something, but their body is saying a lot of things. They're just, they're expressing enthusiasm, but they're afraid to do it. And so I bring that feedback to the owner and I say, this person, this person, this person are all people I want to have an individual conversation with. I've noticed something in our strategic planning. And they say, great, because the more they don't have to be in the middle of the conversations, the better. So we have those conversations, and I have a way of validating that what I heard, I'm making sure that what I saw in their body language was truly what I think it was. And they have this very, intimate conversation with me in that it's confidential and it allows them to express what's missing. And we bring that right back to the owner and say, this is what you have right here, right now. All we have to do is unleash just a little bit of it, just a little bit. We're not going to go crazy. We're just going to at least help them just engage a little bit and see what happens. Are you okay with that? And here's the way we're going to do it. I'm going to make some recommendations and talk to you about these things. I'm working on a case right now where big, hairy deal. I say, this owner is exhausted. She really wants to engage a self-directed leadership team, but she had no confidence in the people that are around her. 5 years ago, I helped her hire a core team of people who had potential to lead the company.
Nice.
They were flat. We hired them, they did their job, and nothing was happening. So we had another 2025 strategic planning session, and I said, this time I'm going to work with the team, not you. So you're invited in, but I'm going to work with the team. And the team was immediately engaged because they were not under the pressure to watch what they say, be careful, don't get too excited about something. Everything was very separate from what they had done with the owner. The owner today we're training a new leader to take on one of the verticals that is it's huge. It's a big part of their revenue stream. And all I heard for 2 years was, she's not ready. She's not ready. I don't think she's ready. And so I said, let's just experiment a little bit and let's give her just a little bit of runway here and we'll define what that is. And we did. She said, okay, I'm comfortable with that. And we did. And now it's going. We're just hired her assistant. They're going to do amazing work this year. But the owner has to know that we're on their team, right? I'm sure you have to do the same thing. I'm on their team. I'm their strategic partner. I'm gonna watch on their behalf to see that we don't go too far with something, that we have, mitigated risk.
So you're actually in a lot of these meetings, like you just described, either without the owner or with the owner present.
Yes, we have to separate them a little bit so that the people around the owner have the freedom to talk. And we do that. So I have one of my team members is mapping away while we're having those conversations, because when we show them what the map looks like, they're dodgers at the amount of information that was sort of hidden underneath their day-to-day responsibilities. And the opportunity that's there is just very exciting.
So to ping off of that and diving a little deeper, what leadership gaps do you see buyers most often flag in due diligence and maybe want to spend a little more time on? Because let's face it, owners, if you're listening, due diligence is taking longer. Sophisticated buyers are asking more detailed questions, and I'm finding they are spending more time on human capital issues. So leadership gaps that buyers are commonly seeing, and how can owners get ahead of that and start closing these gaps today? Okay, yesterday's gone, but let's start today.
Yeah. We could start with a problem we all know about, which is owner dependence in client relationships.
Yep.
Right? If the client relationships are really they're owned by that owner, then why would you want that? Why would you buy that? You've got to get that owner to begin to delegate. We have an exercise we call do more of, do less of with owners in our sweet spot meeting. And when we work an owner sweet spot, we're doing a lot of this process of getting them to let go of a little bit at a time, which is why we can't do this in 6 months or a year, or most of the time 2 years. We have long-term client relationships because even as we're doing it, people changes are happening. So, people are retiring, people are changing jobs, we're hiring, we're doing all kinds of things while we're getting this owner comfortable. And in order to avoid setbacks, we have to make sure that we're on top of all those changes as we're getting the owner conditioned to think differently about the people on their teams. So when we do more of less and do less of exercise, we talk about what it is, to whom it transfers, by when, and what is it going to take to incrementally get this to happen. And then we're monitoring that with them every month. That's a real key piece. If we can get that to happen, we've now done something that the buyers are going to notice. All the relationships don't belong to the owner. There's really two pieces to that. They've delegated some client relationships, big ones, not just the little ones.
Not just the little ones.
Yes, the A clients, not the C clients. We need A client level, and other people are managing that successfully. And then we have internal leadership that's managing operations. So think about it as a buyer. We look at the company, we say, will it run without the owner? Is there enough autonomy for this to run without the owner? The teams are self-directed, there's leadership, and they're capable. And who owns the relationships? Is it all on the owner, or we've delegated those out? And so once the buyers see that, then they know that it's functioning well and that the clients belong to the company and not the owner anymore.
That's super critical.
So
that's super critical. It doesn't matter the industry, the company size, where the company is located, what region it operates in. Universal concern of buyers is what is the level of owner dependence. We're sitting here at kind of the midpoint of the first quarter of 2026, and the economy is doing great things. And so let's talk about the issue of hiring. Companies are getting active in hiring again, and that with that comes onboarding and engagement of employees. I've heard you emphasize onboarding and engagement over the years. What are the biggest hiring and onboarding mistakes that erode value? We're all about value here and exit. What are the biggest hiring and onboarding mistakes that erode value over time?
In the low mid market,
hit us between the eyes, because this is where it matters.
Yeah, it really does. It's such a shame that we get these general terms and everyone makes an assumption about what they are and how they affect the success of a business and the success of the employee. And this is massive, what we're talking about right here. Onboarding, a big mistake is the assumption that onboarding happens as a orientation. It's not the same thing. It's not where are your keys, where's your desk, here's your computer, here's meet the team, have a great day.
That absolutely is I would agree, the traditional, maybe common definition of onboarding. And it's a finite event. It doesn't last too long. Okay, you're on your own now.
Yes. And for us, onboarding is designed as a very, very robust document that lives on through the life of that employee. So it doesn't stop. It is a living document. And so it has another thing we hear about a lot is a 90-day agenda. People have caught on to this. But let's plan 90 days so that, because in a finicky hiring market, people were job hopping since 2020. We knew employers were sort of throwing money at jobs, trying to keep people there, and realizing over time that was not keeping them there. If somebody threw out $10,000 more a year, they jumped just for that, and then they jumped to the next one and the next one to see how high they could leverage their earning potential before this bubble popped.
Yep.
Right, and then the bubble sort of popped, and employers were saying, "Well, wait a minute. We not only we're going to keep this at a reasonable scale in terms of income and benefit. We also want you to come in a few days a week now. So now we've got a lot of work to do." So that 90-day plan for us is 30-day increments, first learning, then practicing, and then proactive self-direction. So first is learning for 4 weeks. And imagine we have to get into the head of the owner. And this is why we need other leadership there, because the owner's going, oh my goodness, I have to take this apart week by week of what they're going to learn and who they're going to meet and who they're going to learn it from and when. And that's a daunting task. So this is why we engage others. And it's also part of, as we engage others, we're planting seeds in the owner's mind of, wow, look at George. He was very helpful on the onboarding planning. And maybe there's more to George than I've given him the freedom to express. So 90-day plan, learning, practicing, self-directed action is very, very important part of our process. And then and what that does is it avoids something very important, blindsiding your peers. Like, oh, Bob, would you mind working with, Jennifer tomorrow morning because she's got a gap in her plan, in her agenda. And you're saying, my gosh, I have meetings scheduled, right? I can't do that. With our planning, everyone knows ahead of time when they're going to be working with a new employee. So that first week is scheduled and it is productive from the minute they walk in the door.
You're really bringing, it just hit me. You're bringing, I think I read this in the opening in your bio. You're bringing world class, big company practices in the HR space down to the small business owner level. That's what I've noticed here.
Yes, that's how I started actually. Was, corporate, we saw corporate enjoying a lot of processes around human capital. They called it, they really put everything under HR at that time. And I was recognizing that this was very different. This human capital piece was a focus on the attraction, development, and retention of people in a way that engages their strengths. HR also does that, making sure benefits are great and payroll is good. Compensation planning is there, and employee manuals are updated. All very important pieces of the employee relationship. The satisfaction and the engagement of their strengths is what we do, and so we're constantly looking at this as making sure that owners of small businesses understand that they have to do that too. But we do it in a way that scales it so that it doesn't look too corporate or feel too corporate. It's
Right.
not overwhelming for them, but it's very much where my work was born there, and extended it out to that small business world because they were so terribly underserved. And today they're still underserved in my area because people are not creating hiring processes with ongoing onboarding and strategic workforce planning the way that we're doing it often. I just don't run into it often.
It's almost like it's hate to call it an afterthought or
Yeah.
but it really is. It's okay. You're here. You got your desk. You got your code to get in the door. You got your computer set up. Get to work. Be productive. What?
Yeah.
There's a whole body of knowledge I haven't gotten yet. I'm new here.
Yeah, that's exactly where the learning piece comes in, is that first 30 days is what we ask the owner and additional, pending leaders or identified leaders. What would you like them to know in 30 days? By the end of 30 days, you want to have a different conversation with the new team members. What are they going to need to know to have that conversation with you? And that's
Yep.
where we need to focus on this 30 days. And then they're happy to participate because they know what's going to happen if we don't get through it. I have a newer leader that I just worked with yesterday who said, I missed the first week. I just missed it. I got so busy. I had to tell the new person, stand by and come in. She's coming in today instead of last Tuesday. So we had to reconstruct the 30-day plan and make sure that there's a thing called checkpoint meetings we have every Friday, that whoever your direct report is, they're going to meet with you every Friday to make sure you're checking off all the learning. Otherwise, we make sure we find time for it. So this
Right.
it's a really big process. It's like 25-page document that truly is very visual. It's mission, it's purpose, it's who's who on the team. It's a lot of contents, but it's a good reference for them as they're growing into their role. And it's also important for us to catch problems before they get to a point where somebody's doing this thing we've all heard about recently, quiet quitting.
Quiet quitting. Isn't that something that I would never do that myself. I wouldn't have thought, 5 years ago it would have been a thing, but here we are.
Yeah.
I've heard you use the phrase before, operationalizing strategy through people. I know many owners have some kind of growth plan, something that they've scratched out, or maybe been a little more diligent than just scratching it out. But the team isn't aligned to execute it. So you come in hopefully at the right time, hopefully ahead of time, to help teams translate the owner's strategy into some type of daily contribution. What does that look like?
This is my second favorite part of what we do. And this is why at the beginning I was saying you don't really notice that we're strategic partners, but that's essentially what I do.
Hmm.
My part is in the strategy and the planning of saying, if we have 3 years to grow, accelerate growth, what are our biggest priorities? But we can't just make a statement there. We have to understand a lot, which is why we do the mapping. So when we think about executing strategy through people, we're breaking down the language of strategy into what they know and can process every day in the context of their own roles. So think about that. Not everybody's doing the same role. Usually in the low mid market, you might have two people doing a similar role, but oftentimes it's one.
Yeah.
And we try to expand that over time so we don't have too much dependence on an employee the way we did an owner. So as we're growing, we're trying to expand cross training and additional team members just to make sure we don't do it in the opposite direction. So that that is that language of the contributors is so important to mobilize strategy. And we talk a lot about mobilizing strategy. We start with it of what is a strategic team. It is you and me and everybody. It's everybody on my team. It's everybody on your team. Everyone's a part of the strategic growth plan, but our roles are different
Yep.
and our level of contribution is different. And so we have to adopt language that I can process and you can process and they can process because it's within the context of what they do every day, but more and exciting
Yeah.
and ignites innovation and fuels their enthusiasm. And we love that because it transforms them. It doesn't just give them exercises. And the worst thing owners can do is have strategic planning and then file it. They just don't do anything with it. Oh, we have goals and we're going to, work on these things. But there are sometimes we run into owners that are afraid to have the tough conversations. And
I
so
was just
they're,
th- I was just thinking about that. What does that feedback loop look like? I imagine you've got systems and scorecards and things that you've used to help the company effectively drive accountability and results. I'm sure you've got some of that in your bag of tricks.
we do, but we don't overload that because our clients already have systems and processes and tracking mechanisms that they like. They just haven't really used. So we make improvements, edits where we think we should, but we want to adopt what they're already using. We want to know that they have a partner that's going to work with what they've developed, not come in and reinvent the wheel. So we're careful on tools. We like I have a client this year. This is their second year, and we're strengthening their core team. And one of the core team members is new, and she said, I'm doing these things. I'm in the learning 30 days, but I recognized that she was not feeling like she had a win. She was feeling like she was still very dependent on everyone else as she got into her fourth week. And
Interesting.
so we were able to have her take the workflow management system and study it and find out what's not being used and reintroduce it to the team. And she just emailed me back this morning and said, I did it. And it was fantastic. And they loved it. And so now we're going to start, and she's leading something. And we talk a lot about this. How do we get them to lead in their role? They want to be leaders. They can lead in their role. They don't have to be a president or vice president or manager. They're leaders in their role, and that's how we engage them in the future of the company. So we don't want to leave them hanging after strategy. When strategy happens, that's the worst thing an owner can do is say, "Thank you very much, Maria. That was exciting. Everyone's feeling good. And then I come back and find out they've done nothing.
This is I'm going to rewatch this episode. This is fascinating because you're making me now think about we can almost get a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth productivity boost out of employees by challenging them and rewarding and offering leadership and surrounding all that with accountability. And I'm getting excited.
We live in a social media world, right? Everyone has a microphone in their hand. Everyone has
Yep,
a voice.
yep,
Years ago, when I was a younger professional, you earned that voice. You didn't have it when you walked in the door. Today, everyone expects it. But what the reason I'm saying that is, where does that voice land? Today, we know that we've opened the door to invite the input of people across the organization within the context of their role, I always say, so that it's appropriate. And this is very exciting that we're finally in a place where I don't have to push for it, that employees are actually expecting it. And when we talk about leading in your role, the owners now know what that means because they're getting it sort of in their face, if you will, by
yep.
new employees.
You know, exit and succession planning, two big things we talk about here. There's an endpoint to everything, unfortunately. There's an endpoint to an owner's ownership of a business, but who knows? Based on the foundation you've built, it could be the beginning of some next incredible growth phase. I've noticed owners that allow the teams within their company and the external team of advisors, the owners that allow the team inside and the team outside, call it, to do their thing and maybe even talk to each other and get some kind of collaboration going, tend to they tend to be at the helm of companies that grow far beyond their peers. They end up becoming market leaders when not all decisions have to be run through and be approved by just one person. So I know firepower explicitly ties its team readiness to succession planning. You and I have known each other a long time, and you've been all about that as a motivation. So what's the link between optimizing what people do and transferable value when it's time for an owner to exit the company?
It's kind of like, if you think about the real estate example, if you're going to buy a house, you buy the building, or you can buy the building with optimal systems in it. Which one is more valuable, right?
Yep.
You're going to pay less for the house that is not optimized. It's in a good neighborhood. It has a certain value, but you're going to have to invest significant amount of money to get that thing optimized. It's electrical, plumbing, HVAC, all the things we know about. But the one next door has all been optimized. It has new HVAC, new plumbing, new electrical, it's all up to code. It's the same thing. It's the same thing in business. It can't just be the financial infrastructure that you're buying, because there are people that drive that success, the success of that infrastructure. And if you don't optimize those, the people and the systems are the interior workings of that business. If you eliminate that from the strategy, it's a house of cards. It's not going to sustain itself.
Could not agree more. I tell owners when we first meet or shortly thereafter, as far as the cash flow that you could pull out of the company at any point in time, you can have it now. You can have every bit of the discretionary leftover cash flow today, or you can have a multiple of it later when it comes time to sell. And what's the difference? The difference, as you just mentioned, is reinvestment, targeted improvements of the company, optimizing the company so that when this business goes out to the marketplace as an opportunity, it stands out among its peers. All else being equal, which are sophisticated buyers going to buy? A company
Yes.
that needs a lot of improvements, in your example, the house that needs a lot of renovations and updates, or the one that's been done that has had all those renovations, improvements, and updates. And let's face it, the internal team, if they knew how to do it, optimize the transferable value, they would have done it by now. The external team, if they could do it on their own without the help of the internal team, the owner could just hire fractional people. But it takes that collaboration of inside and outside people to make it happen.
It does. It does. And we've had the great fortune of working with owners who we could make an assumption and say that all owners, I could have years ago, I know better now, but our clients care very much about their people. They care so very much about their lives and their success, not just the success of the firm or the company. And so because of that, they don't want to be that unoptimized building. They
Yeah.
want to be optimized so that they can have their people can have a future. And so that's part of their decision to say, I definitely want to do this. I want to make this better. I want to reach better revenue goals. I want a better multiple, even though I'm going to have to wait to get it, but it's worth the wait because in the meantime, we're co-leading the development of future leaders and experts in that company that are going to have a tremendous opportunity because of it. And these owners want that for their people. They're very committed, which is why they have such trouble having hard conversations with them. They care emotionally about them.
And yet, just another aha moment here. And yet, that's what the buyer is going to be buying, not the owner hanging around for X number of years after the deal is done. Let's be honest, it's after the owner has moved on. It's who's left in the company. And I bet you're big on leadership development to fix, prevent that future buyer concern about who's left in the business, what the internal team looks like by the time they take over as the new owners. Leadership
It's the
development.
first thing. Yeah, it's the first thing we talk about with owners is what's going to happen. You want to change. We call it change your role. We don't say exit right away because how that feels. And sometimes they feel like they want out, but truly, once we get the process started, they just want a different role. And we redesign their role through that owner sweet spot process to help them get the role that is this essentially, Bob, is it identifies the work that only they can do. So what are the relationships or the things that they were probably the rainmaker? Most often they are, but
Yep.
what is the work that only they can do? Let's get them back to that and give everything else to the team. And when they do that, they just take a breath when we get there. It's like, oh, I can breathe. I can trust people. But I don't only most of the time they've hired people and they've learned to trust them, but they don't trust their capability to execute. There's something they're afraid of.
Yes.
Usually a mistake. And we think about it, how many mistakes have we made? We've made plenty of mistakes in our careers, in running our businesses. You have to do that. You don't learn just like children, right? We don't learn in business if we haven't made mistakes, which is why I often say I don't work with startups because those leaders say, we've got this, no worries. I love George and George loves me and we shook hands and we're going to do this. And, inevitably a year down the road, they're calling and saying, well, that didn't work out so well.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Two owners come to me like the day they've decided to put their company on the market, and I got to be honest, with my buyer hat on, these are things that I think we're going to get dinged on, and too often I'm having to say that's not the right person that you've got in that role, or well, you're really asking a lot of that one person. You're asking them to do the work of two or three people, and now here comes a new owner, and you're introducing a massive amount of change, and your workforce is not ready for it.
Oh, and you bring up something very important that we deal with all the time, and that is cloning. The owners clone themselves in a mini me. They have a mini me person.
Yep.
And so a buyer comes in and says, well, the owner exits, and now I've got this person who's just another version of the owner. all things center around that person. That's another mistake that we overcome through that sweet spot process.
So, what can you think of one metric that owners they should start tracking today? As soon as they hear this podcast, and they end the podcast and they get back into their office, something that they can start tracking today that predicts team-driven success.
I hate to use this acronym because it sounds very corporate, but it applies and we love it for our small business clients is start tracking KPIs, develop KPIs on growth and track them. Because if you don't, and I explained, sort of a small business definition of KPIs, KPIs being key performance indicators. And so all we're doing is deciding what are the three things that we can look at to tell us that we're actually getting there. That's all.
Mm.
It's just those three key things that if I say this, and this is happening, I know we're getting there. If two are happening and not one, we make sure that we address that. But without these indicators that we're making progress, we don't mobilize goals. We can't mobilize strategy. And we can't maintain alignment of who's doing what.
Is
So
it on
start
the
KPIs.
is it on the front end, maybe during the strategy session, where you're helping them decide what those KPIs need to look like?
No, actually, that's a good question. It's not. It's more toward after we start working with the teams, and it's not right away with the teams because KPIs scare people. And so we start with reinterpreting strategic goals, making sure we are understanding where their strengths play into a
Okay.
contribution to that goal, and then saying, now that we know this, let's figure out a couple things that help us know we're getting there. And by the way, those are called KPIs, but that's okay. Don't think about it. Think about a couple of things that they're the indicators that help us know we're making progress. So that if we don't do these things, we can address our gaps right away. But yeah, it's more the middle of the progress because if I do it too soon, it's immediately overwhelming
Yep.
as corporate.
The defensive walls go up. Sorry,
Yeah.
can't hear you.
Yeah.
I heard accountability. I'm not listening.
Yes, it's scary. They're scary. And nobody wants to hear corporate language in small business. They just don't. They don't appreciate that.
That's
So
why they're there, frankly. I find often people who are fine being self-employed in a lower middle market company did not want, maybe they worked in corporate, they figured out it wasn't for them. And in this environment where things are a little more fluid, a little more loose, that's where they feel comfortable.
it's so true because they probably had a bad experience with KPIs or something else. And I don't want to go there first, but I say it because some form of indicator is important in mobilizing growth and making it doable and sustainable. We can't just do something to say we did it because
Yep.
if we can't sustain it, then it's useless when a buyer comes in and says, well, they try all these things, but nothing sticks. We want them to be sticky.
We mentioned a few minutes ago about how long to make these changes, how long to start making these changes before you put the company up for sale. And I say this often, 2 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years, something like that, that accomplishes two things. One, it proves to your future buyer that the changes you've made are sticky, that you didn't just make these changes within the last 6, 9, 12 months. They've been in place long enough. We've set up a system. We're paying attention to it. We're working people through it and improving people and optimizing the company long enough for you, the buying company, to feel comfortable that these changes are going to stay when you take over. The second thing it does is it calms the nerves of the future provider of capital. The buyer often
Yeah.
comes with borrowed money, investor money, and they've got to be satisfied too that these changes that have been put in place are meaningful before they put their capital into the opportunity.
It's a great point because last minute change looks like last minute change. You can tell, we can always tell when we walk in if something's troubling the workforce. There'll be something off about the way they communicate, about the way they collaborate, about the way they perform individually. And if you try to shake up the foundation at the end of the deal, at the end of the road before you get to the negotiation table with a buyer, it's going to be real obvious.
Yep. Well, starting to wrap it up here a little bit. I often ask my guests if an owner's thinking about exit, it might be in their future. What is the very first thing related to their team? In your case, related to their team that they should take care of this quarter?
Yeah, I always say start with roles. You've got to
Yep.
bring all roles in your company up to date, optimized, aligned capabilities. All of that has to be done before you start doing anything else that looks like we're going to take a new direction or take on something new, a new process, a new technology, anything that's going to accelerate growth. You've got to have a strong people foundation before you go there. So
Yep.
start there if you think you're 3 to 5 years out.
Well, Maria, this has been awesome. We've talked about, let's see, onboarding and alignment, roles and accountability, and all other kinds of things. Where can folks get a hold of you to hear more about the good work you do?
We have a lot of information on our website, firepowerteams.com.
Yep.
And there's plenty of there's videos, there's reading material, there's short version, long version, whatever strikes your fancy, and just to get a little bit of understanding about the areas that we focus on. And you can always reach me at maria@firepowerteams.com.
Excellent. That's fantastic. Like I said, I'm going to watch this one again. Well, folks, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Exit Teams podcast. A big thank you to my guest, Maria Forbes, for sharing her insights. So if you run a company and you have people in that company, as I'm sure you do, I suggest you reach out to Maria and her team and see how she can help. If you're a business owner thinking about your next chapter, now is the time to start building your advisory team. You can learn more in my book, Exit Teams. Build a team of advisors for your business sale to get a higher price. Available on Amazon. And don't forget to visit exitteams.com for free resources, tools, and a master class that can help you prepare for a successful exit. Until next time, build your team, sell smart, and take control of your future.